Hello, my name is Shania Villarreal. I apologize if it echoes or anything. Currently hiding in the closet so my husband can do bedtime and my kids don't try to crawl and find me and interrupt me, and I have to do this about 1,000 more times. Um, I hope that everybody can see this because it took me probably longer to figure out how to record this and record myself doing this than it did to do the whole entire presentation. I did my final presentation on the importance of diversity in the teaching force. As I was looking through the list of different topics that you could do, this one just really got me thinking about how I have only had one black teacher or teacher of color in general the whole entire time I've been in school from kindergarten all the way until college when I went to college in Houston. And I lived in a lower income area, and I always have. And I even asked my husband while I was looking at the topics who lived in a wealthier area, of town, and he told me the same thing. He can not remember a single teacher of color that he's had. They were all predominantly white women. That's why I got interested in this. But I ended up putting statistics about the different races of teachers in the U.S. So it says majority of teachers in the United States workforce is predominantly white women, about 79.3% of teachers. Only 9.3% of teachers are Hispanic, and 6.7% of teachers in the U.S. are Black. These statistics and graphs were gathered from the National Center for Education Statistics, and I did include two graphs that kind of just shows the differences between, the white teachers and teachers of color. Um, and my next slide, I put the need for diversity in classrooms. So I put schools are representations of what the real world is like. When students are not exposed to different cultures, races, and identities from students and staff, this can lead to students believing stereotypes about certain racial groups. Diversity in the teaching force is important because students can learn from educators that come from different cultural, racial, and life backgrounds. And having a more diverse group of teachers can empower other students that come from different cultures and backgrounds, as well as make them feel seen and valued as members of the school and within the classroom. And then I put, what is the need for teacher diversity? I put teacher diversity as an integral part of education because the United States has a large population of students that migrated to this country. Um, like my husband, for example, he moved here from Bangladesh when he was 10, and he was kind of surprised with how many other students have migrated here too when he came. And also, I just feel like the US is also getting a bigger population of, students of color. I know when I went to high school, we had a big population of Hispanic kids. I also put as stated from our book, Is Everyone Really Equal? They state that American classrooms are experiencing the largest influx of immigrant students since the beginning of the 20th century. And I listed that was at the end of the book. And the US also is considered the melting pot and has many races and cultures across the country. So I feel like that's why there should be a big need for having, teachers of color kind of representing and teaching other students of color. The need for more Black and Brown teachers. Students of minoritized groups thrive when there is a teacher that looks like them and understands the struggles they have faced academically and in life. As diversity continues to increase in U.S. classrooms, there continues to still be a majority of white women in classrooms. Um, and I also found this from a scholarly article that I found. Black and brown teachers can serve as role models, cultural mediators, and advocates. Other ways they benefit schools include the fact that they can provide culturally based instruction and higher expectations and can produce a positive impact on the achievement and retention of racially minoritized students. Why is there a lack of Black and brown teachers? From research that I found, teachers of color face their own set of challenges that make the job compared to their white counterparts that much harder. Um, and I also found this when I was researching as well. In contemporary times, many regions of the United States are experiencing massive teacher shortages that do not seem to be getting any better. There are a variety of reasons for this, including an aging teaching population, increased regulations and criteria for teacher licensure, low teacher salaries, and racial prejudice and discrimination experienced by faculty members of color. Even in the teaching profession, Black and brown teachers face oppression through prejudice and racial discrimination from fellow staff, administrators, and even parents. And then I've already previously talked about this, but I remember only having one Black teacher, and I remember it was a Black woman that I had in middle school. And other than that, I cannot remember having any other teacher of color. Um, that was the only time. I put oppression in the teaching profession. I put like in all areas of life, the teaching profession is no different for a person of color when it comes to being systemically oppressed and facing racial discrimination. Um, and a quote that I found, I quoted the definition of oppression um, just to kind of have that in here since I talk about it a lot. And then I also found this quote that says this focuses on recruitment, however, is complicated by low retention rates for teachers of color because teachers of color are placed at higher rates in underdeserved schools with many structural challenges. They experience faster burnout rates than white teachers. Additionally, having limited networks of support and addressing school challenges can take its toll on the retention of teachers of color. But this explains why not only in the United States we have a teacher shortage, but also a shortage of Black and brown teachers because the systemic oppression they face through lack of support and being allocated to lower income poverty schools that have increased behaviors in students and lack of help from administrators. The reasons for diversifying the teaching force, I put there are many reasons that there should be diversity among classrooms, but here are some that I found through research-based scholarly articles. Reason one is Black and brown teachers can be role models for all students in classrooms. I found that this quote that says, additionally, having limited networks of support and addressing school challenges can take its toll on the retention of teachers of color. Having more Black and brown teachers will help other students of color have a positive role model to look up to, as well as having teachers that understand the struggles of racial discrimination people of color face. We have a lack of representation of diversity in the teaching force. This can lead to the even further divide of races and boost the idea of racial discrimination. And I also found this quote that says, additionally, having limited networks of support and addressing school challenges can take its toll on the retention of teachers of color. And I bet this describes having limited Black and brown teachers can lead to white students having an idea of superiority and students of color feeling inferior to white students because of lack of representation. The reasons for diversifying the teaching force. Black and brown teachers can help increase academic scores and overall outcomes for students of color. According to research, students of color have higher test scores and overall academic success when paired with teachers of similar race. And I found this through one of the articles that I was reading. A second major argument for diversifying the teaching profession is that teachers of color are particularly well suited to teaching students of color because they bring to their work a deep understanding of cultural experiences of these learners. Such cultural synchronicity is said to give teachers of color an advantage over their white colleagues in advancing the academic outcomes of students of color and improving their overall school experience. I also found a study that was done in the Tennessee Project STAR. In the study, students were randomly assigned to teachers in the participating schools. Dee found that racial pairing of teachers and students significantly increased the reading and math achievement scores of African American students by 3 to 4 percentage points. The race effects were especially strong among poor African American students in racially segregated schools. Um, and another reason for diversifying the teaching force is according to research, there needs to be more Black and brown teachers in the workforce to increase workforce rationale. In summary, the evidence suggests that compared to white teachers, educators of color appear to be committed to teaching students of color, more drawn to teaching in difficult to staff schools, but also elevate the high rate of attrition in those settings. Overall, teachers of color feel they are being called to teach and most often go back to the areas where they grew up to teach and inspire students like them. And in summary, overall, there is a need for more teachers of color in the workforce because students will greatly benefit to seeing people of color in professional positions of knowledge and leadership. Having a diverse teaching force also gives all students a wider range of perspectives, helping reduce prejudice and racial discrimination. Also, having more diversity within the teaching force can help address the rising inequalities in education for students and staff of color. Teachers of color can recognize the systemic barriers and oppressions that are well integrated in schools. The lack of diversity in the teaching force can be attributed to systemic barriers and oppression people of color face, such as teachers of color typically being placed in underfunded schools with more students with behaviors and lack of help from administrators. Also, the teachers of color can face racial discrimination and limited opportunities for leadership in moving up within the school system. To put in perspective how disproportionate the number of teachers of color, here are more statistics on the diversity of the teaching force. And it says today, of the more than 6 million teachers in the United States, nearly 80% are white, 9.6% are black, 7.4% are Hispanic, 2.3% are Asian, and 1.2% is another race. 80% of all teachers are female relative to the composition of P through 12 students in the United States. The current teaching force lacks racial and gender diversity. And here is my references. This topic really interests me, and I had an interesting time doing a lot of research and finding out all this stuff about this topic. Um, and thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope everybody has a good night.